Hello, my name is Taran Turasilan and I will be analyzing the gender wage gap, whether or not it is caused by discrimination on the basis of gender. Now, full disclosure, in my channel, I plan to explain complex economic concepts as easy as possible, and I'll be doing it from a politically right-wing lens. Now, due to my right-wing bias, I'll do my best to present the left-wing perspective as fairly as possible. Today, I will be looking into the gender wage gap as previously stated and argue why it is not, for the most part at least, caused by gender discrimination.
Now, the background of this debate is that the gender wage gap has been argued to be caused by gender discrimination and societal norms according to third wave feminists, and they often cite the statistic that women earn 77% of what men earn on average in the US. Now, to be fair, there has been historic unfair discrimination in the Western world, and it still exists in many cultures around the world. But they also further elaborate that it's due to the patriarchy and systemic sexism that has caused this disparity in spite of our egalitarian culture. While this appears to be true, if you look at the average of the total of the incomes of men and women separately, it doesn't account for multiple factors. Now, these are two graphs showing the gender wage gap, and there are two curves, the supply curve and the demand curve, which is represented by MRP as in marginal revenue product of labor. And when the supply curve and the demand curve meets its equilibrium, this is basic economics, and I don't want to get too much into this. There'll be more economic graphs in future videos. The 77% statistic comes from an analysis of median earnings of the genders in full-time, but this is misleading since full-time means at least 35 hours, and this doesn't account for people working more than 35 hours. Now, a study an American Time Youth Survey done by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2015 showed that men on average worked 8.2 hours a day and women on average worked 7.9 hours a day. Now, this difference may not seem significant, but when you add up the weeks and months and years, the difference is much bigger. And since women take more leave, more part-time leave, maybe for holidays or parent leave, we should instead look at weekly wages instead of annual salary. So once the weekly wages instead of the annual salary are taken into account, the gap becomes 81%. Now, going back to women and men working the same hours, once you compare men and women working 40 hours, the gap decreases to 87%. Now, men are also more likely to be part of unions and stronger union contracts, and are more likely to be in higher paying occupations. So once we take into account for that, the gap falls to 91%. Now, you may now say that women are still earning 91% of what men are earning, and that is unfair. However, there's still more things to go into that can explain the gap, such as maybe women less likely to ask for higher raises. Now, the reason that I'm mostly skeptical of the wage gap is that in a study done by the Press Association, women in their 20s will earn £1,000 more than their male counterparts per year on average. However, this changes when they start to become 30, and the man turning 30 would earn on average roughly £9,000 more than a woman of the same age. This is true at least up to 2006. And the reason for this is because women have babies roughly at this age, so they'll become mothers and take parental leave and part-time work, while men will take full-time work, and this obviously increases the gap. And many feminists would argue that this is societally constructed. It would and sort of influences women to raise the children rather than the man. But others would argue this is more of a biological impulse that influences the woman in their choice. But since this is mostly an economics presentation, that debate will be for another time. Now, another thing feminists argue is that women from a young age are discouraged from pursuing education, but this isn't true, as women in the modern age have made up at least 50% of degrees. For example, by 1987, women earned most of the master's degrees for the first time, and by 2006, more women than men earned doctor's degrees. Is now the reason that they're not earning despite as much as men despite this is due to them choosing different degrees, which I'll talk about in the next slide. Now, the majority of the gender wage gap is caused by men and women choosing different college majors, and particularly women choose the lower paying degrees. Now, according to a Georgetown study, the early childhood education comprised of 96.4% female and 3.6% male, and this is the lowest paying college degree at $39,000. The second lowest paying is human services and community association, where it's comprised of 82% female and 18% male, where it is $41,000. Dollars. But the highest paying college major is petroleum engineering, which is 17.3% female and 82.7% male, and that yields roughly on average $136,000. Now, according, as you can see from this graph, women mostly make up education, psychology, and communications, and these are also lower paying jobs, but men make more of the engineering and physical sciences, which is more higher paying, at least for engineering. The next video will be an economic analysis on Brexit, and I aim to get it done by this Friday, so stay tuned for that. This is the end of the video. Sorry for my stuttering. The links for all the data will be in the description, and I hope to make this a weekly thing. Rate and comment to tell me what you think I should improve on and what you think I have done well. Bye.